and then to go. Hey, hello, good afternoon. Just a minute into the afternoon. Thank you very much for joining me for this training today. I'm really, really excited about this, and I know we're running over 3 days, but everything is recorded and you can catch up whenever you want. I know it can sometimes be difficult to fit this kind of thing in every day, so just jump in when you can and with what works for you, and then you can just catch up whenever you need to. This is my Becoming the Female Leader of the Future training, and I'm super excited about it because I really want there to be more women in leadership. I want there to be more women who are holding power in businesses, in their own businesses, in their own lives, importantly. I want women to be earning more money, because I think that's something that's also really critical that we don't always talk about. So what I'm going to talk about over the next 3 days is how to become what I like to call an emotionally powerful female leader. And the reason I talk about emotional power is because it's really rooted in emotional intelligence combined with the power that women have when they actually unlock the things that we are taught, the things that we are kind of socialized in, but that we're also taught are not things that we should kind of hold. And we actually are able to, when we're able to unlock all of that, that's when we're able to really step up into the power of leadership. And I'll talk a little bit about why I think those things are so important for the leadership of the future, and why women actually hold the best kind of qualities typically for succeeding in leadership. And the first thing I just want to take a moment to reflect on is, how are you showing up today? Because obviously there's an awful lot going on in the world, in Europe in particular, and it's a very stressful, kind of overwhelming time. So just kind of check in with yourself and see how you're showing up. If you want to drop it into the chat, then please do. What I would say is, I'm very much of the belief that we can hold two things at once. We can hold more than two, but we can hold two things at once. So we can hold a feeling of concern, we can hold a feeling of worry, it might be a little bit of fear, whatever it is that's going on for you as relates to the world at large, but we can also hold a need for us to focus on our own lives and to keep ourselves moving forward. So by doing one, we're not cancelling out the other. That's important. So I would say, give yourself, if it's something that you're struggling with, it's okay to give yourself permission to feel both of those things at the same time, because we need to keep moving forward. It's important. So that's just the first thing I wanted to kind of cover. So if you're here, you're basically in the right place if you are feeling stuck in your role, if you are seeing men getting promoted ahead of you who maybe aren't in your mind as well qualified as you are, perhaps not as well experienced as you are, but they have the ability to sell themselves, to be chosen for leadership roles. Perhaps you're feeling busy and overwhelmed, but you're not necessarily actually kind of making any of the progress that you would like to be making. There might be a part of you that feels deep down that you are ready for the next step in leadership, but that you're also aware that perhaps there's a piece of you that's holding you back. So it might be that you're feeling low in confidence. We've got this disconnect sometimes between intellectually knowing I should be ready, I am ready, I'm good enough to do that job, I've got all of the receipts to show where I should be doing it, but then underneath that we've got this part of us that's sabotaging for some reason. So if you're feeling any of that, this is definitely the thing for you. And the next thing I would say is, this is very much something that we're all in together. This is something that we kind of all go through collectively. In any of my sessions, I always ask that we show up with a spirit of compassion and a spirit of no judgment. And it might be that that's no judgment towards others, but most importantly, it's about not showing judgment to ourselves. So whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking, it's completely okay. There's no judgment around that. So just allow yourself to tie into what's going on and see how you're feeling as we go through this. If you want to drop anything into the chat and anything into the comments, then please do. I would love to hear from you as we go. And that also gives you a sense of being part of a community and not feeling like you're kind of on your own with this sort of thing, because some of this stuff isn't necessarily the kind of things that we're necessarily talking about an awful lot. I'll tell you a little bit about me before I go any further. So I am a mindset coach. I'm an energy therapy practitioner. I'm a strategist. I am a podcast host, and I'm a former Amazon head of marketing, which is what I was doing in my previous life before I moved into this. I had a lot of time and a lot of experience of feeling like I didn't really fit in the environments that I was in terms of some of the businesses that I was working in, particularly kind of in later years, where I was in very male-heavy environments where they were really driven by a lot of very masculine energy. And that was something that I really struggled with. Having left there, I really wanted to work out what to do with the things I was really passionate about. So one of the things I'm really passionate about is feminism, the impact of the patriarchy on women. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's incredibly important that we have more women in leadership, that we have more women with power, more women with money. And I also have seen a lot of women holding themselves back. And that is from both my time in my career, but also with what I do now for my job. And I really want to help women to break away from that. Because actually, and we're going to get a little bit into the reality of leadership versus what we get told about leadership. The reality is that women make really incredible leaders. And actually, a lot of the things that we are socialized into are the things that make us incredibly, incredibly powerful if we're able to access that and if we're able to unlock it. So really just turning away from what I thought I needed to be in order to be a really good leader and actually kind of stepping into a different style of leadership has been something that I learned through my career, was something that worked really well for me and was actually incredibly powerful. And when I stopped kind of listening to what I was being told was the way to be, when I stopped listening to the stories around we're not really caring about people, we're really caring about product and profit, we're focusing on the work and the output, we're not focusing on the person. And actually, when I started kind of doing the opposite, that was something that had really great results for me. And it's something that's really transformed the work that I do. So it's really possible to kind of make those steps and to make those changes. And I just want to tell you a little bit about kind of how to start doing that, really. What this is over the next 3 days is an overview of my program, which is called Ignite, which is all about forging the emotionally powerful female leaders of the future who are ready to level up now. So not in a year, not in 5 years, but who are really at that point of knowing that they're ready. And I base all of this work on the belief that you are already an amazing leader. If you're a woman who is thriving in any kind of a business environment, you're already an amazing leader. The chances are that there is something that is blocking you, there's something that's sabotaging you. What we need to do is we just need to find that, and we need to unlock the access to the skills that you have that make you an incredible leader. So I'm not really doing anything which is around teaching people management training. I'm not really doing kind of typical executive coaching in that way, because I'm not here to teach you something new. I'm here to get you accessing the stuff that you already have, because that's the stuff that's incredibly powerful. What I'm going to focus on for the next 3 days are 3 core aspects of this. So the first one, which we're going to talk about today, is power. And then I'll be talking about connection and authenticity. So those are the 3 kind of core pieces that make up this work. What I'm going to give you over the next 3 days is important info and important context around all of these topics, but also ways to start making these changes yourself. It's really important to me that you leave this feeling like you have got some tools and some ways that you can start perhaps unpacking things, reflecting on things differently, getting new context. I'm also going to give you a bit of a chance for self-reflection, which we don't always have. So if you're taking this time for yourself, hopefully this is a moment where you can actually sit and reflect on some of the things that we're going to talk about and give yourself that space, because I think that's also incredibly important. And I'll talk a bit at the end about how you can work with me longer term if you're interested. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So as I said, I'm not really about teaching you something new today. I'm about helping you unlock what's already there. I'm not very chill about this. I really care passionately about it. I think it's incredibly important. That means that I might get a little bit sweary, because I do from time to time, just to warn you. But it's important, and it's passion, and I want us all to really kind of care deeply about this stuff. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the reality when it comes to women in leadership now. So women actually in kind of, there's a vast swathe of research which backs this up. The reality is that in all of this research, women score better than men in leadership skills, which relate to things like improving business performance, employee engagement, decision-making, and team results. But what we end up with is a stalling of female talent. We have a stalling of female talent at a certain level. We only get to a certain point. We also find that capable women are less confident than men when it comes to progressing their careers. Again, it gets to this point where women feel like it's really hard. It's harder for me to get to that level. One of the contributing factors to this is that there are nearly twice as many men in senior company positions than women, and women make up 6% of CEOs and 32% of directors of FTSE 100 companies. So in spite of the fact that women really demonstrate and very clearly demonstrate excellent leadership skills that not only improve team performance, but also align with business performance improvement, there's still not enough women in these roles. When it comes to things like emotional intelligence, women score higher on that. Female leaders are more likely to be doing work that is driving better outcomes for all employees. So looking after the individuals. Women are also much more likely to be seen as demonstrating empathy consistently. And empathy is ranked as the #1 leadership skill. So leaders who are good at empathy perform higher as a result in things like coaching, engaging with others, and again, decision-making, which is super powerful. Businesses that have got female leaders are more profitable. And the businesses that have got the best pipeline of female leaders have got the largest gains in profit. So not just we've got one female CEO or we've got one female director at the top and that's enough. Businesses that are really focusing on a pipeline and making sure that they've got female talent coming up through the business who have got the space to progress, those are the ones that are performing the best. So what is going on? So we know that women are really amazing at leadership. We know that women perform incredibly well at leadership, but there aren't enough of us. When there isn't an adequate amount of representation, that results in increased feelings of imposter syndrome, feeling like you don't belong, for example. So the less that we see women at these senior levels, the less likely we are to believe that that is a space that we belong in. And that just kind of becomes our programming over time. We're also conditioned differently by society, by culture at large, and we quite often feel less deserving of those spaces. We feel less like we are able to step up and say, yes, I can do that. Yes, I know what I'm doing. I 100% believe in my capacity to do this job. And what that means is that it's called a gap of entitlement, which also affects women's careers, because in spite of the fact that women are perfectly capable of doing it, the belief is that they can't. And that entitlement gap, which men have in a much, much lesser degree, results in more men stepping up into these positions of leadership. Women are also much less confident about their ability to progress their career. So 67% less confident than men, which is huge. And again, we've got all of these contributing factors, which are kind of programming into us and saying, maybe this isn't a space for you, or maybe this is something that you can't do. And women are also less confident when it comes to asking for a promotion or asking for a pay rise. So even when it comes to saying, yeah, I'm ready, women find that much, much harder. And again, we'll kind of talk a little bit about programming and conditioning, because this is the stuff that's really, really important to start with. So what we know is women make absolutely fucking great leaders, and yet only 20% of leaders are women. And this is the stuff that I really want to change, and the stuff that I think is really important. Crucially, we can change it, but what we need to do is two things, I believe. One is, obviously, we have to be changing all of the ways in which the world is working against women. We need to be making the right changes to policies, to procedures, to diversity and inclusion measures. We need to make spaces where women can actually thrive if they are parents at the same time. All of these things are really, really critical. We need to be removing bias from hiring processes and so on and so forth. This is all really, really critical. But I also believe that that will take time, because that is the nature of the beast. what I think is incredibly important is that we also furnish women who are currently in the world as it is now with the ability to make those steps up and to become senior leaders. Because the more women now who are able to get into those roles, the more women are going to see that as a space that they can be in, the more we're going to contribute to that pipeline. So I'm talking really about how we get women into those spaces now. That doesn't mean that the other stuff is not important, because it absolutely is. This is just my focus right now, is how do we get women to actually thrive in the world as it currently is right now, in whatever space you are in, as it exists. So that's just the kind of important thing. So today is all about power, and it's about reclaiming your power. And I talk a lot about emotional power, and what I'm really talking about there is a combination of your emotional intelligence, your intuition, which are both things that are actually really strong in women, the power that comes from unlocking those and being able to be yourself. Because this is one thing, and I'll talk about this in a little bit more in a minute, but one of the things that happens is we're quite often told that these things are not desirable, that we're not meant to be demonstrating these in leadership, and they're not necessarily things that work for the world of leadership. And so we tend to kind of like squash them down. And quite often we find that we are molding ourselves into a box that isn't necessarily for us. Versus if we can actually really connect with who we are and become much more unapologetically ourselves, that's very liberating. So that gives you the confidence to be yourself. It gives you the confidence to make decisions. It gives you the confidence to be okay with failure, with being wrong, with asking questions, and it lets you lead much more from the heart. And that stuff I think is incredibly powerful when it comes to leadership. The skills that I'm talking about, so kind of emotional intelligence, intuition, leading from the heart, these are often seen as feminine. I'm intentionally using quotation marks here because I'm not getting into a kind of men and women who's born with better skills at whichever thing. That's not kind of a space that I know enough about behavioral science to talk about that. But what I can talk about is the conditioning that women have versus the conditioning that men have. And we are conditioned by society and culture into better developing emotional intelligence. We're conditioned to better developing empathy, listening skills, connection. And we're also, the flip side, conditioned into thinking that these things are not valuable. Because a lot of the way that businesses have started and grown have been in a way that values much more masculine, again, quotation marks, intentional behavior. And women are quite often talked about as being too little of one thing, too much of another thing. Can make it really hard to know, what is it that I'm supposed to be? I'm too loud, or I'm too quiet, I'm too bossy, I'm not assertive enough. We're also engineered by society to be people pleasers and to be nice girls. And that can make it quite difficult to work out, who am I? What am I supposed to be? But also we're kind of taught that those things are bad. So then how do we step into positions of leadership? Do we overcorrect and we go too far the other way? So it can be quite difficult. We're stuck in a little bit of a double bind, I think, from time to time. So I kind of liken it to, we get this power and we're given that by society. And it's like a little seed that boys and girls get equally. But for boys, it's not nurtured, it's not cared for, it's there, but it doesn't have any chance to grow. It's just stuck in a little dark room and it's told, no, we don't need you. For girls, it is encouraged until a point. So it starts to grow, the seed starts to grow because we're talking, oh yeah, empathy, oh yeah, that's good. Oh, take care of people. Oh, listen to others. Oh yeah, all that stuff's really good. Yeah, great. But society also wants to trim it into a very specific shape. And so it kind of likes to snip off the bits that it doesn't like. And that's a result of kind of the power of the patriarchy, really, is about keeping us in a very specific shape as women. And that's the most valuable thing for that kind of, for that system, is to keep us in that small shape. And so if we want to be leaders and we want to step up into these roles, it's almost like the world kind of decides, oh, this is really dangerous, and we're just gonna shut it up in a dark cupboard again, and we're gonna mark it shame, and we're gonna put it in that cupboard, and this vine that's been growing is just gonna kind of be in this little dark, and it's gonna get all shriveled up. What we want to do is we want to find a way to get out of that dark cupboard. We're going to shine a light on it, and we're going to let it really thrive because that is the really, really powerful stuff. So how do you start tapping into your power? That's kind of the key thing today. The first thing is you want to really understand what your power is and start to identify it. You want to recognize how and where it's been diminished and start flipping the script. And I'm going to talk about all of these in a little bit more detail. The reason that it's so important is because it's incredibly meaningful for the world, right? Not just for you, but for the world at large, because the more that you're able to access this, the more that you're able to really free up the things that make you uniquely you, that make you very powerful as a leader, the more you're able to sit with authenticity and stop giving a shit what the world says about who you need to be and what the rules are, the more you're going to thrive. And it might mean that that results in a big change for you because the current space that you're in doesn't allow that little plant to grow. But it also means that you're going to be able to step up into something bigger and better and greater for you. One of the really important things, I think, is finding our best way to shut out those voices that tell us we can't do something. Some of those voices are ours, but some of them are from outside. Like, so how do we stop giving a shit about all of that? I think that stuff's really important. But we all have got this stuff. We're all programmed to hold it as women. And so we really just need to access it. And that's what makes us kind of completely unstoppable, frankly. I'm going to tell you just very briefly kind of how I've done this for myself, because this is a real journey that I've been on, kind of from the point that I started working right the way through to now. And I used to be, I was taught from quite a young age, I was told that I was too emotional. I was far too emotional. And what I learned was that being too emotional was a bad thing. And that just became broader, which was being emotional is a bad thing. And then when I got into work, having really sort of locked away a lot of my feelings and my vulnerability and access to my emotions, I then got into work and I saw, okay, well, there's all of the leaders are men and all of them are, you know, working in this very kind of masculine way. My first boss was a woman and she was the only person at her level who was excluded from senior meetings. So again, what I'm learning is, okay, well, they don't like her because she's opinionated. I was then called intimidating myself. I've been called aggressive. I've been called bossy. I've been called ballsy. I'm fairly sure I've been called a bitch, but I think that's just been behind my back. And so it's all of these things going on. And looking back, there probably were times that I was aggressive and there probably were times that I was bossy. There were definitely times I was bossy. There probably were times that I was being ballsy. But that was me overcorrecting from a lesson that I had at a very young age, which was around one of the core strengths actually that I have now, was around like, well, being emotional and being soft and being vulnerable is not a good thing. And learning from the world around me, these are not desirable traits in order to thrive as a leader. So I overcorrected and I went all the way the other way. The other problem though, however, is that we are kind of consistently in a double bind as women, because when we are confident, we can quite often receive words like intimidating. When we are firm, we can quite often be called aggressive. When we make requests of what we need, we can quite often be called bossy. So we also kind of sit in that double bind of, am I being bossy? You know, so sometimes I was, but actually sometimes it's just about asking for what you want. And that all just gets programmed in again. And we get stuck in this space of, and I was very stuck in this space of, I have no idea who I am. I don't know how I'm supposed to lead. I don't know who I am really kind of deep down, because everything felt really challenging. Sarah's just said, when men communicate in that way, no one labels them. 100%. Or if they do, Sarah, they label them differently. So a man would not be called bossy, he would be called commanding. You know, the language that we use is incredibly important, and absolutely. Yeah, Vanessa says, I've been on the receiving end of that description, usually by men of a certain age. Yeah. And men get these positive labels. Absolutely, 100%. So, you know, I was kind of in this space of, I don't know who I am. And that becomes incredibly difficult when you're in a space where you feel like there is a box that you are being squashed into, you're being constrained, you're being forced into directions and angles that are not comfortable for you. And it actually takes up a lot of energy. It takes up a lot of focus to just try and kind of be in the shape of the box, when actually that box isn't meant for us. You know, there's rules that are in that box that are not ours, you know. So how I got over it was I really spent a lot of time connecting with who I was. So I started working a lot on recognizing what my superpowers were. And my superpowers are really well connected to things like empathy, to listening skills, communication, all those kind of things. I also stopped giving a fuck. I stopped giving a fuck what people thought, within reason. I don't feel like it's an absolute 100% of people I don't give a fuck about, absolutely not. But I actually stopped really caring about what people were telling me was the rules. And I stopped caring about the fact that I needed to fit into this certain box. I really spent a lot of time working on my intuition as well, because that's been an incredibly powerful thing. Now, obviously, I did this through a series of different things. I have done a lot of my own work with coaches. I have done a lot of energy psychology work, which is one of the tools that I use. So I've really kind of spent time on accessing this kind of stuff. What it means is that I know the really powerful ways to do it and the powerful ways to do it quickly. Vanessa refuses to get in the box. Yes, Vanessa, let's all refuse to get in the box. But I had this realization, you know, once I kind of did a lot of this work, and some of it was practice and self-reflection and taking that time, I had the realization that all of the things that made me a great leader, and a lot of this realization came when I was pretty much at the end of working for someone else and before I started working for myself. The things that made me a really great leader and that would have made me a better leader were all of the things that I was told were weaknesses, and they were actually all of my strengths. And, you know, I spent time at Amazon, as I said at the beginning. That was my most recent employer. That is one of the biggest and toughest businesses in the world to work at. And I really spent time particularly kind of towards the end of my tenure there, just being myself, just really connecting with all of this stuff. I've been doing a lot of this work by this point. And the more I connected with myself, the more I opened up my emotions, the more I was vulnerable, the better results I got, the better results I got individually, but the better results my team got, the better reputation I had in the business for being a good leader. And so that's really been a valuable learning for me was, God, once you stop worrying about all of this, and once you actually unlock all of this really powerful stuff that you've been taught to squash down, that's where all of the power comes. You know, that's where all of the changes come from. So this is why I feel like this stuff is just really important. So I want to go into like a little bit more activity-based stuff, and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a moment for some self-reflection as we kind of talk about how to access your power a little bit more. So the first thing I want to do is just a little reflection exercise, and I would love for you to share in the chat, whether you're on Instagram or whether you're on Zoom. I would love for you to share in the chat if you feel comfortable doing that, as I said, in the spirit of judgment-free, compassionate space holding, but also don't feel that you have to. So the first question is, what beliefs do you currently hold about who you need to be in order to be a leader? Charlotte says a man. Hard-nosed. What you were told by a white-collared male in his 50s. Yeah, thanks. That also sounds very much like the kind of thing that a white-collared male in his 50s would say would be hard-nosed. Vanessa, yeah, so what beliefs do you have about who you need to be in order to step up in leadership? Less emotional. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. A risk taker. Mm-hmm. Strong vision and commitment. Vanessa says, if I want to win in the current world, I need to stop challenging. If I want to retain my sense of self, I need to keep forging ahead. Oh, that's very interesting. So you're having that conflict of these two things here. Okay. And now I want you to just reflect on, when you think about leadership, and again, what it needs to be, what is it you feel is hard for you to do, what is hard for you to be, what is hard for you to embody when you think about these kind of beliefs around being a leader? Sarah says it's hard for me to be myself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, now take a moment to think about, where might you have learned these? So where might you have learned these beliefs and these limitations? Where might they have come from? If I don't challenge, we don't evolve. I'm at the point where being myself is important. After all, we should be authentic, right? Yeah, this is how we evolve. We challenge. We have people who do things differently, where things change, and they're changing in order to suit, we need to change them in order partly to suit the world that we actually live in now. My beliefs come from male influences, parent, work, previous marriage. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And from other women who diss other women. Yeah. I think one of the, this isn't necessarily something I'll go into an awful lot, but one of the sort of, I think one of the tricks the patriarchy has managed to play quite successfully is convincing a lot of women that it is a system that benefits them. And part of that is a lack of support for other women that can happen. I think also historically, women who have kind of succeeded through earlier generations than us were told that there's one seat at a table for a woman. So there might be a board room with 12 seats around it, but one of them is for a woman. And so you're not competing with the other 11 people, you're competing with every woman for that one seat. And that's been a really kind of crafty trick that's been played on a lot of women. And that has, I think there's some really huge changes happening in that space, but it does still sometimes filter down from time to time. Divide and conquer tactic, 100% Vanessa, exactly that. And it distracts us, it completely distracts us from the real problem, because we end up with this narrative that is that women don't support other women. And actually, when you give women spaces to support one another, it's incredibly powerful, and it's a really huge thing. But again, it's a really crafty trick the patriarchy has played, because we've basically helped to uphold it, Okay, so now I want you to just reflect on who or what might benefit from you holding those beliefs that you have. Sarah says no one. Mm-hmm. Men. Mm-hmm. So this is something, as you go forward from here, I want you to really take and really bring awareness. Vanessa says, not all men, just the weaker ones who cannot stand to be challenged. Yeah, absolutely. This is not about categorically, this is something that's every man, absolutely. But men who are seeking particular types of power, who are sitting in these systems that are very masculine heavy, that are supporting the patriarchal structure that we're in, they are the ones who benefit the most from us believing that we don't have a space at that table. Because as we've discussed, the businesses don't benefit, society doesn't benefit, you definitely don't benefit, you know, so it's actually a very, very small group that are benefiting from this. So what I want you to do going forwards is really start bringing awareness to these thoughts when they come up. When you have this voice that says, oh, I can't do that, start to interrogate it. Well, where did I learn that? Is that really true? Who does this benefit? That I believe this, who benefits from it? Because if the answer is not you, then that's not a belief. That's a belief that's come from someone else. And it's something that you've been kind of taught into. If you're not benefiting from holding it, then, you know, that's something that we need to work out how to move past. So a really, really powerful thing to start with is just to be paying attention, to notice what's going on. As I say, to start interrogating things, just kind of questioning, whose is this? Where did this come from? And so on and so forth. Next thing I want to do is sort of switch into a little bit kind of more internal focus. And I want you to think now about what have you been told is not a strength? And just think about the first thing that comes to mind. So for me, mine was, you know, being emotional. That's not a strength. You're too emotional. What is one thing that you can think of that you've been told isn't a strength, particularly when it comes to leadership? Emotions. Mm-hmm. Okay. Emotions, mentoring, the pace I work at, I'm called a machine. My decisiveness, I'm told I am intimidating. Gosh, that's interesting, isn't it, Vanessa? I just cannot imagine. I can't imagine a man who's working really hard being called a machine in a derogatory way. So what I want you to do now is to take that and I want you to reframe it as a superpower. And you can own it. So it might be, so for me, my being too emotional, I am emotional. I am connected with my emotions. I'm connected with the emotions of others. So emotional isn't untrue. Too emotional is. It might be that you say, actually, it's complete bullshit and it's not true at all. But what I want you to do is see if you can find the superpower in it. See if you can find how you could flip that into something that you take absolute ownership of, because that's yours and that's you. And see how you could reinterpret that as something really powerful. And write that down either in the chat or just write that down if you've got a journal as something which is, you know, my superpower is this because, and what is the result? What is the positive result that comes from you having this superpower? So Vanessa says, I'm working to embrace my emotions and gut response to things rather than analyze my way out of my feelings. My gut is often right. Yeah, our gut is often right. Our intuition is such a powerful signal. And the more we have kind of going on, the harder it can be to hear that. It's like a little voice. And sometimes it's a little voice in a really loud room. So really connecting with it and allowing it space to make itself heard is a really strong thing, because it allows us to kind of make decisions more effectively, and enables us, I think, to understand other people a lot more if we're working with our gut and our intuition more so than our kind of cognitive side that logics our way out of things. So with this superpower now, I want you to own this as your superpower, and at any point that you hear or that you have the voice inside, so whether this voice is internal or external, which tells you that this is something which is not right or not good enough, I want you to work through that reframe. This is my superpower because, and just continue to remind yourself of that. So all of these things are practice. We don't do this once and then we're kind of magically done. But the more that you can reframe that, the easier it will become. You know, this is kind of the work of practice. You can also do this with, I mean, obviously do this with any of these things that come up, you know. So if you have another thing that pops up that you feel like you're told is not a strength, do this exact same exercise again. How do you reframe? How do you reclaim it? And again, it's about really owning it and being okay with the fact that this is something that you have and that this is yours, because this is where the stuff is really, really powerful. I want to just do like a really brief kind of energy shifting exercise, just to kind of get everyone in like a really good zone. So just follow along with me. You're just going to put your hands on your heart and take a nice deep breath in through your nose and sigh out. Take another nice deep breath in through your nose. Just sigh it out. And close your eyes if you want to. Another deep breath in. And let it go. Just connect with yourself for a moment. And just appreciate yourself for taking this time out in the middle of your day or whenever you've watched this. Appreciate yourself for taking the time to explore this. I just want you to tap gently around I'm just going to tap just gently, just underneath your collarbones. Just tap and just say, my superpower is, and say out loud what that superpower is. Because Sarah's in an open plan office. Okay, no problem. That's all right. You can come back. I'll be sending you the replay so you can come back and do this a little bit at the end when you're somewhere quiet. We'll just say it in your head. Absolutely perfect. Yes, absolutely say it in your head. Yeah, you can just tap. Hopefully no one will see. Okay. My superpower is, say it again. Because it's my superpower. It's mine. I own that. And it's powerful. I'm powerful. And you're just going to thump your chest here. And you're just going to say whatever the word is for your superpower. So mine would be emotional. Emotional. Say it again. Breathe that in. Breathe in that feeling of power. Okay, just put your hands on your heart. Take a nice breath. Just going to keep our energy shifting and moving and like holding on to that, you know, like these beliefs it's all energy, right? So I'm just going to build that up. And this is just something you can do. You can just tap here. Just remind yourself, this is my superpower. So whenever you need it. So there's much more of all of this in Ignite, which is launched the 21st of March. So if anyone wants to chat. But really, you know, I'm doing this because I want there to be more emotionally powerful female leaders. That is absolutely the future of leadership. It's the future of leadership based in the world that we're currently in, with all of the things that we've been through, all of the things that we need. And I really want that for you. I want that for women as a whole. I want it for future generations of women. I want you all to make, as Cindy Gallup says, a fucking shit ton of money, if that's what you want. I want you to have more influence. I want you to be able to change the world for the better. And that's what happens when women are leading. So that's why I really, really care about this stuff. Charlotte says, I have a 3-year-old girl and I would like it to be easier for her. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And also easier for someone who's 4 years younger than us. You know, how do we make it incrementally easier with every generation that comes through? I'm just going to tell you super briefly about Ignite so that you can kind of get a little bit of a sense of what it is. So this is really a much deeper dive into becoming an emotionally powerful female leader. So it's an intensive coaching and mindset shifting experience. And it's about getting the female leaders of the future ready to level up now. So I do believe in working quickly, and I do believe in making really big shifts at pace, because frankly, we're all busy. We've all got big dreams, we've all got big goals, and we don't want to be hanging about. So this isn't for you to be doing it in a year. I want you to be ready to do this like now. So I'm running a 2-day intensive in person on the 21st and 22nd of March. I will be offering this as an online program later, but this is the initial launch. So it's going to be 2 days of in-person work followed by 2 months of leveling up. So we're going to have calls in the 2 months that follow so that you've got support and accountability. But it's really going to be, a combination of coaching, mentoring, training, strategy. We're going to do a lot of really deep subconscious clearing, energy shifting. We'll do some tapping, which is what we just did. That was a very, very light taster. I'm going to go really deep in tapping, because that is something that's incredibly powerful at helping us to program in new beliefs and let go of the old ones. And it's going to be a group of really incredible women. So I'm very, very excited. It's going to go much, much deeper than we went today. And it does kind of bring together everything that I know. So I'm really, really excited about it. And we're going really deep into clearing energetics, reprogramming limiting beliefs, and building your confidence so that you can get to that point where, firstly, you know and understand who you are and what your powers are, that you own them, and that you can take them out into the world and be unapologetically yourself, and also that you're really connected with all of those things that make you a really incredible leader that perhaps you have been taught to diminish and hold back, that's been like locked in that dark cabinet. So that's a super brief overview about it. The cart's open now. I'm doing calls with everyone who's interested, because it's really important that we've got the right group of women, that everyone's kind of in the right place for it, and that you've got the opportunity to talk to me more about it as well. I think that's super important. So I'm gonna send everyone, I'll be sending out the replay. For those of you who signed up, you will get that with all of the details. Otherwise, if you're on Instagram, everything will be in my bio, so you can catch all of the information there. And so just as we wrap up, like, any questions? How did you find that? Questions, thoughts? Sarah, thank you very much. Thanks for coming and thanks for sharing. I really appreciate, everyone being vulnerable and being open here. It's really important. Yeah, we're not on our own. And this is the key thing. We've all got we're all dealing with this stuff. But we're not often, I don't think we often have the space to really kind of open that up. So as I said, just keep working on practicing, those bits, reframing, so on and so forth. I will be back tomorrow. Where are the face-to-face sessions? They're going to be central London, Mona. I'm currently just seeing a couple of venues and sorting out a couple of details, but there'll be somewhere really accessible for tubes and trains and so on. Yeah, I think that is everything. So I will be back tomorrow at the same time. Covering connection is tomorrow's topic, and we'll be kind of going much deeper into the rest of the stuff. But yeah, there will be absolutely playbacks. I'll be sending them all out on Friday, so you can catch up with everything that you may not have missed if you're not able to attend live. And thank you very much for being here, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.